Hello and welcome back to coverage of the second Louisville Cube League Cubevitational. This is the fifth and final video of this tournament, with each video covering one draft of the event, so keep that in mind if you're trying to watch in order. If you haven't checked out the other videos in this series, or you just need a refresher, the full summary of the Cubevitational is available in the first video in this series, linked below. Today we'll be covering the final draft of this tournament, our Vintage Cube Draft, played through a double elimination bracket based on the standings from the 4 previous drafts. As always, there's a link to the cube in the description below, but keep in mind that it may have been updated since this event, so it may not match up exactly with the cards you see today. So for a quick recap of where the standings ended up and what the bracket is going to look like here, we have Joey and Bats as the number 1 and 2 seeds, each getting a double bye. Scott and Jacob are the 3 and 4 seeds with a single bye. And in the first round of play, we'll see Matt, the 5th seed, versus Prose, the 8th seed, along with Derek, who is the 6th seed, versus Brian, the 7th seed. Reminder that throughout the bracket, the player with the higher seed will always have played a draw choice in each match. For our first match here, we'll be checking out Derek versus Brian.
Hello and welcome back to the final draft of our Cubevitational. Here we have Vintage Cube, and on commentary we have myself, Joey.
And I'm Scott.
And on camera first we have Brian and Derek. Brian was playing a control deck that was kind of a failed storm deck as well. We'll see some element of that. Scott, do you want to talk about what we've already seen from Derek and what he's putting together?
Yeah, Derek is white-red aggro. I know it looks like mono-red at this point, but he's got a pretty even split of white and red. He's also packing a Mox Pearl and a Black Lotus, so pretty busted collection of cards for Derek.
Mm-hmm. And I believe part of that was that his deck also wasn't able to quite come together on either mono red or mono white. If I recall, on the day we had quite a few aggro players in the draft. You'll get to see some of those later. And mentioning Brian's partial attempt at Storm here, we'll get to see possibly who ended up with the other parts of that deck here. Because this was our final event, everyone was taking it pretty seriously, so there was also a fair amount of hate drafting, taking important pieces to different strategies, when only first place matters, not going to find people caring as much about just trying to get the best deck they can get. Definitely have to stop all the villains at the same time.
Yeah, and
So,
Brian was attempting Storm, which is a move that he employed in our first Invitational, and even being relatively new to cube drafting, he almost took the whole thing down with his Storm deck the first time
in,
around. It didn't
indeed,
quite come together this time.
Indeed, he actually had the most wins, I believe, of that final event. We had a bracket system favoring people who have done well in the previous drafts of the Invitational, and Brian very quickly dropped down to the losers bracket of that event, but then won, I think it was 5 or 6 matches in a row to make a great losers bracket run before losing in that tournament to a mono red aggro deck. Here we see Petty Theft bouncing the Bomat Courier, the first major play from Brian this game besides some top spinning, and getting rid of the 4 cards that had been exiled, probably the last chance he was going to have. Looks like we see Treachery and then some combo pieces with Dream Halls and LED. So with Treachery gone, just combo pieces in hand. Dream Hall's not threatening to do too much if it gets in play. Lion's Eye Diamond speaking to the fact that Brian might have the Underworld Breach or something to combo with it. Here we
Whoa,
see him activating, so that must mean...
we're just casting this treachery.
I see.
Okay.
Deciding that his hand is worse than the Treachery that got exiled. So here, the Spellbinder actually enabling Brian to take a card. I wonder if maybe he had put a useless card on top with Sensei's Dividing Top, having this be part of his plan. But here he can activate top and cast Brazen Barrer, so Sit's power in the air going to be coming back at Derek next turn, it looks like. Though Lorna the Third Path breaks that up in the most brutal of ways.
Just probably Derek's plan for an eventual Dream Halls, but the way this game played out, he doesn't need to save that anymore.
True. This is the first round of this draft, so the players didn't know what each other were on, but Spellbinder definitely giving that information probably made Derek pretty happy to have Lauren in hand, looking at just 2 cards that it could have destroyed. Really 3, I guess, but the treachery got taken. And Brian taking a moment to think here at end of turn with his Sensei's Divining Top, which is his right, and just deciding that that's enough. Those 3 cards all dead, and digging deeper was going to be too slow against the fairly aggressive draw. Not the most explosive aggro draw we've seen, but had nice disruptive elements there. Here for game 2, we'll see if Brian can string things together a little better.
So a Mox Diamond start, looking to curve Elite Spellbinder into a Wheel of Fortune pretty quickly. Like
True.
opening.
Derek did have a couple pieces of quick mana in his deck besides the diamond, so there's always a possibility that a good draw here could have him turn one of those 3 jobs. It doesn't look like that's what he ended up finding, and not a castable either. So pretty nice there for Brian. Means not a 1-drop, not a 2-drop, not a piece of quick mana, so maybe just another land onto what was Derek's 4-land hand, or another expensive spell in a hand with Wheel of Fortune.
I don't love playing that Mox Diamond there. We know that Brazen Borrower is an option that Brian has, and casting it for no value just means you might have to discard another card if he had the Brazen Borrower, and Brian did in fact have the Borrower.
True. Do you know if maybe I was saying my theory was that the last card was another land? Do we know if possibly there could have been an instant that he was leaving up with that or representing? Obviously, a lot that he's representing,
I
but
caught a peek of it, and I think it's Skyclave Apparition.
okay. So maybe a bit greedy running it out there, you're right. But did have another land to discard if he needed it, so wouldn't have gotten too punished if that had been the line.
Yeah, it's a very minor thing for sure.
hmm Ooh, Signet serving a little awkward here as it doesn't allow the cast of Petty Theft.
Yeah, the MTGO Vintage Cube list and the list that LSV's Discord has been drafting have both opted to remove signets in favor of talismans, and I think situations like this are exactly the reason why.
Situations like this, especially online play, anyone who's ever cast a Signet online knows how
Oh,
hazardous that can be, or not hazardous, but troublesome, let's
yeah.
say, as it's difficult to tap those while paying for a spell if you're not doing so very purposefully. Here, you know, as much as I'm always on the side of Storm, Brian's deck looks like he's in a bit of trouble. Derek's got the right disruptive white elements in his deck, and also Brian choosing to go with mismatched style snow basics immediately kind of puts him in the villain camp in my eyes. Right, turn 3 Tinker on the play. We saw Sensei's Divining Top last game, so we have to assume he has Bolas' Citadel and was threatening to turn 3 start using Bolas' Citadel. Obviously, the aggro match, the place where Bolas' Citadel is at its weakest. Here, Borrower on, or Petty Theft on the Apparition is interesting. What would your all's thoughts be on? Obviously, he's going to get a 2/2 here. On maybe just casting the Brazen Borrower, trying to trade with the Spellbinder. block the most damage this turn. Obviously, depending on what both players have in hand, but
I am leaning towards just taking 5 damage in that spot. We know that Derek has a Wheel of Fortune, and it seems like a potential play for him this turn. And if you, um, I don't, you can just like kill a creature permanently. I don't know.
that's fair.
Just
Very good
getting a
point.
2/2 on this board doesn't do much. I could see just casting the 3/1 flyer, but that also seems like not super
But
strong.
if you're expecting Wheel of Fortune, yeah, you've won me over to the Wheel of Fortune
But
line.
but Derek knows that too. It was all face up information, so he's not incentivized to cast a Wheel of Fortune. So as we saw, he may just not play it.
Yeah, both the Wheel and the Brazen Bar being face up introduce an odd game of chicken in that scenario, and possibly are the reason why Brian chose to go for it. Here, Burn Spell kills the Brazen Bar, leaving Derek with just Wheel of Fortune. But casting Wheel of Fortune against a combo deck has got to be scary. We see him opting to instead sacrifice his Horizon land, Fiery Islet, so that he can just take a draw instead. Even mismatched islands! Even the islands! Oh, aren't consistent. Brian. This has to be a failed intimidation tactic. It would have worked against me, but we see Derek's rampant zone abuse. I don't think it's possible to get under his skin. His creature's just living in the red zone. Obviously, something that's happened this game so that he can keep his hand revealed. So it is a nice gesture from him that has led to his cards being so far up, but the encroachment. The creature is definitely encroaching. Again, though, not the fastest of clock. Like, it's all the disruption element out of Derek's aggro deck, it seems. Confirming that Tinker cost 5 mana, but no artifact in sight. The Illusion and Skyclave trade off, so 3 more turn clock with Spellbinder really incentivizes casting something.
Oh, that's a great one.
And we see a quick cut here, which implies that maybe Derek was taking a while to think through his different options. Maybe wasn't so clear cut to choose Thalia, but Thalia seems great. And now again, the face-up information making this awkward. Normally, against an opponent with one card in hand, playing aggro, it's pretty straightforward to cast Dream Halls. But when you know their last card is Wheel of Fortune, that becomes far scarier. And of course, Thalia in play means we can't actually cast the Dream Halls. I'm getting ahead of myself. Oof. Smuggler's Copter, meaning that even some kind of board wipe probably doesn't save him here, as Wheel could definitely find something to crew the Copter. Okay. Glenalandra, but
That's
that...
simply just not enough at this point.
Right, we have more than lethal here. Can't imagine what saves us unless we have life totals wrong, but I'm pretty sure we don't.
You're dead.
Okay. Brian just continuing to play it out for the camera. And that was our first match. We'll see you back with 2 other players at another point in our bracket for the next game.
So we saw Derek take Brian down there 2-0, sending Brian into the lower bracket. During that time, we also had Matt taking down Prose, sending him to play Brian in the lower bracket. Due to some technical issues, we actually ended up missing on the second round of games, though those rounds saw Scott entering play and defeating Derek, while Jacob was defeated by Matt coming out of his bye. In the lower bracket, Prose eliminated Brian and moved on to face Derek, since Derek was the lower seeded player eliminated this round. With all of that in mind, we'll be jumping in next to see Joey enter play versus Scott.
So here we have my match against Scott. I was playing a mostly green, but green-red ramp deck. Here we see one of my mini one-drops to lead us off. Scott, what is it you're going to be firing back with in general?
I'm Esper. They the boys here really want me to call it Reanimator. I don't know. I guess it is technically, but it's very light on reanimation stuff. I consider it more of like a mid range strategy, but I'm just Esper cards. We'll just leave it there.
And right before this match, right before our recording just now, I was talking about a regret I had of feeling like the pressure got to me in some moments. And I feel like in my memory of this match, this Ragavan was castable and I chose not to cast it, but maybe I'm remembering one of many other matches as many players had various discard spells that peeked at my hand at various points. But
We played a lot of Magic on this day, so it's very
it,
easy to
that's
to.
true. Again, this is the end of our Cubevitational event, so we had drafted many times, and definitely at this point in the bracket, we were already starting to lose some players, and the pressure was definitely getting to me. So, Utopia Sprawl, we see they're allowing the dash of Ragavan, so I could cast that Orzhov signet and choose to do so. So, just continuing the ramp, pulling the card a little bit out of the sleeve so I don't accidentally steal Scott's card. Here, need to pick up Ragavan. Yep.
You have so many game pieces in play. I started this turn with Swamp.
I'm just playing the ramp deck. That's what's going to happen. You're playing a more controlling mid-range slow deck, but I know Ragavan ramps made a treasure. So here we see another dash and then Cradle making 2 mana, so 3, 4, 5. So this is Nissa. Nissa could untap Utopia Sprawl to make 3, just going to do a different forest so I don't risk losing my Utopia Sprawl land, and then get in for 5. Here, I'm definitely feeling a bit of pressure as Jace threatens to find cards of import, but also could set up some kind of reanimation creature that could really shut me down. So happy to have Nissa in play to apply pressure pretty quickly.
Yeah, and Ragavan revealed Vampire Hexmage there, which I would have liked to draw just to deal with the Nissa, but then my draw step for this turn was Dark Depths, so it would have been even better if I could just draw both cards. But it was not
Indeed,
to be, and I quickly got run over in the first game.
indeed, especially because Nissa was threatening to make a lot of mana next turn, as well as making another creature meant the Gaia's Cradle was going to tap for a lot, so I had enough mana to cast anything I had, and had a lot of lethal draws if one hadn't already been revealed. I had already forgotten what the Inquisition saw. I don't think there was any of the finishers yet, but I have 5 things in my deck that I think would have been very lethal there.
Yeah, and after that first game, I am pretty terrified, but I open on a library in this game, one of the few power spikes in my deck here.
Indeed. Library on the play, good place to be, and getting to turn your extra cards into just taking my resources away, which definitely feels like where you would want to be in this spot, as building up your own resources after seeing how explosive my deck can be last game makes it much more valuable to just take away my resources instead. So we see Avenger and Wall of Roots in hand, and along with 3 lands. With only those other 2 cards in hand, I can't imagine. So the only draw that would make me wish I had played that is, I think, Nissa. I think that's literally the only one, and there are some draws that make me wish I had a creature there. So, for example, like if I drew Ladia or Ragavan, dealing the 1 extra damage. Yeah, drawing anything that costs 3 for sure, but also even if it was Ragavan, the 1 extra damage is always nice. We see I've deployed the Wall of Roots and a couple of lands, so Avenger plus some unknowns, plus 1 more land in hand. Suspicious Stowaway threatening to loot again could set up something in the graveyard. 1 point of damage. Yeah, that's never a great sign, but Garrick here does threaten to set up an overrun, but again, I just don't have the creatures. Here, maybe I'm doing some math on casting Avenger next turn. So I have 2 mana from creatures, 3 mana from lands, 2 from untap with Garrick. So before a land drop next turn, I still have 7 mana and can cast Avenger. Of note, Scott, it looks like you're off the library plan this game pretty early on. Is that just because you feel some pressure from me knowing the Avenger's going to come down, or?
It's just the way that my hand has played out. I cannot really trade effectively for what you're doing, so I need to start enacting my game plan.
Mhm.
And to do that, I have to just play a few cards in a turn, so it's gonna take me off library.
Right. Imperial Seal putting Elish Norn in the graveyard, Elish Norn getting Animate Dead
Yep.
means I'm now 1 mana short of Avenger, but Avenger is not that impressive either, with the plants all dying immediately to Elish Norn.
It should be noted that this is a post sideboard game. I have this Elish Norn in my sideboard for creature matchups. I just swap out Iona for Elish Norn. And I also have a complement of Wraths and spot removal that I just couldn't fit in my main deck. So I really show up with plenty of tools post board for the creature matchups.
Okay, we see Garrick enabling a casting of Primeval Titan, which finds Gaia Cradle and Mountain. I didn't have any other cool lands in the deck. It's pretty much just lands that make my 2 colors, and Cradle being the big payoff land. So Inquisition might miss. No. Kind of a miss because that tracker isn't doing anything in the face of Elish Norn. Elish Norn
Iona. Okay, never mind.
down to 3 power, so maybe a bit interesting on blocks, but we see Garrick go down here because that Stowaway is a 3/3 off of the Elish Norn. And Demonic Tutor. So multiple discard spells, multiple tutors, letting you set up whatever you're trying to enact. Definitely feeling behind here with just a 7 mana 5/5 in hand. And thank you, Scott, for pointing out that it would be a 3/3. It seems like that's what we're going to see here.
Oh, land before Avenger. Pretty classic
I,
misplay.
I maybe rewind here. I don't know.
Yeah,
Wall of
that was
Roots
a
is a
joke.
plant.
That was a joke.
Wall of Roots would be 1 bigger. Interesting. I think I missed a Primeval Titan attack there, right? It's a 4/4.
Into my 4/7?
Isn't Animate Dead making it a 3/7?
Oh, it's 3/7. Yeah, you're right.
So, like I said, a lot of nerves, and maybe leaving it back threatens the double block, so maybe it's correct anyway. But also thinning 2 more lands out of my deck to try to find some of the few cards that could help here. Even though I'm behind, this is still a board where Craterhoof might be lethal. Here we see I'm keeping track of my plant token +1/+1s for no reason. This is the lowest value. That Wall of Roots is currently a -1/3 because of Elish Norn.
Ooh, and I found my other reanimation spell, so I imagine an Iona is in the future here.
So it will put your life total in a bit of threat, though.
That's definitely true. But I don't have a ton of ways to win the game just in my deck, period. So I kind of am 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 priced into just doing this, even though it's going to make my life total pretty scarily low.
Flashing back Demonic Tutor.
It seems like a good place to start the turn. I mean, ideally getting some kind of protection, or not entirely sure, but
Yeah, it looked like that might have been Hex Mage, but maybe I missaw.
that's
Also, maybe a
like
weird
an
thing to do before this loot.
yeah.
Oh,
Really,
discarding Hex Mage.
oh, I see. I okay. Okay. Right.
So this is me trying to draw Craterhoof Behemoth or a way to put into play Craterhoof Behemoth and didn't find it. I had, I think, 3 outs there that were lethal by a quick count looking at things, but actually I think I had a 4th draw that could have kept me in the game. So definitely thin outs. Game 3 we see start here on Ignoble. Always good to have one of my mana dorks. I have 4 1 mana producing plays, counting Utopia Sprawl as well. And also the red splash is for a couple of very powerful cards, so Ignoble Hierarch, making sure I have the mana. And here we see one of those red powerful cards in Ragavan getting in there. And Demonic Tutor definitely appealing.
But you're just going straight for a Garrick,
Yep. So
which
Garrick
fair enough.
untapping 2 lands, allowing me to
And
play
Repel. Wow,
Refellos.
what a turn! Ooh, true.
Here, a ton of mana, starting out with Ragavan just hitting. Gonna make a beast. Should have a treasure here. Oh, wow. Sloppy play on my part. I think definitely the pressure of the day getting to me, just forgetting to get my treasure token. Here, Liliana kills the Ignoble. Not too scary of a play, though, as Ragavan plus Beast could just kill Liliana if we want to.
But after your opening, sort of fizzling out a bit, I was very nervous after your turn too. But it feels like maybe I'm gonna get to play in this game a little bit.
Indeed. It seems weird. I'm not sure what else I have in my hand at this point because it wasn't anything that cost 6 mana, presumably, because I would have cast that. But so either it's all lands or something else. I don't know. Either it's too expensive or it's all lands.
We'll see where this
And
text going here.
It might be Beast at Liliana, Ragavan at you, yeah.
Oh, no Elesh.
Exiling Elishnorn definitely felt good here.
Mhm.
Also, of note, it looks like that's Dam that got put into the graveyard at some point.
Yeah, I killed your Raphellos.
That's right.
Yeah.
So here we see a Reclamation Sage that doesn't destroy anything. So yeah, it definitely speaks to a bit of weakness in my hand, but the overrun from Garrick is lethal next turn off of Dash Ragavan 3 attacking creatures. Oh, but Liliana can just kill Reclamation Sage, so it was just a pure mistake for me to even cast it.
Ooh, and the Liliana tag team. Cleaning up
Definitely, definitely wish I had this game back. Missed a treasure token, chose not to kill that Liliana, and then cast a 1 toughness creature. I'm way off my game here. Just need to consider. I'm imagining this is going to be a Dash Ragavan and kill one of the Lilianas. Choosing to kill the 3-drop Liliana.
Another interesting line, considering your hand seems like it's so blank. It almost feels like, why do you care? We discard some more cards, but
That's fair. I have to again assume, though, that it's very expensive spells in my hand, and that's why, because I'm not playing more lands, I'm not casting other spells, I don't really have reactionary stuff in my hand, so it's not like I'm holding it to react to what you do. So I have to assume I have 7 and 8 drop in my hand. Actually, I have 7 mana, so a pair of 8 drops, maybe? Which, if that's the case, really wish I had that other treasure. Here we see Dash on Ragavan. Liliana take.
pretty bad not block there. I could just block with my 0/2, right?
That is true. If
This game is oh
so,
boy.
I think it makes sense to let Liliana take 1 damage to not just immediately play into Ren 6, which I could easily have. Like, I am splashing red in my deck, and the only red spell I've shown you so far is Ragavan, which maybe is worth splashing on its own, but
There was
I,
a Lelia that I discarded in the first game as well.
oh, okay. So you had seen 2 total red spells. But still, like, I would understand if it was just all about playing around Renin sets. So here, another beast. So Garrick making, I think this is the 3rd beast this game. So having to fight the value game, no idea what could be in my hand at this point.
We're
Is this a
mid lane.
desperation activate on Liliana?
I think I'm gonna flip my Jace here. I think that's yeah. And
Which,
I caught a peek of a sideboard card in my hand that I'm gonna just let happen here instead of talking about it. But I definitely want my Jace to be flipped for this turn, so sacrifice my
okay.
Liliana to get that happening.
Four mana for Damnation.
Kill all the creatures. And this was the first you had seen of a Wrath effect. I mean, I played a Dam on turn 2, but of the last game, but
Right, so this is effectively trading the Liliana for Jace, because you could have cast the Damnation, killing your Jace, keeping the Liliana, but in this situation, the Jace seeming more valuable.
yeah, I think so.
Yes, Raphellos died to the Dam. Yeah, it looks like I have 2 cards in hand, but still nothing else to deploy here on 7 mana. Oh, no. got something. Maybe I'm
Down.
wrong and I was just holding on to stuff that had 1 toughness because Liliana was in play. Yeah. It definitely makes sense for at least some of the turns. So pretty far behind here.
Yeah, I'm just looking for a way to close out this game now. And as I mentioned before, I don't have a ton of ways to do that, especially with Elishnorn being exiled already this game. I'm really just looking at, you know, I have this Jace going, I have an Elspeth, Knight Errant, I have an Iona I could reanimate, and I have Hexmage Depths. That's kind of it, though.
So you had mentioned, I believe, in the second game sideboarding out Ionia. What was it brought back in for game 3, or
We actually caught a glimpse of it in game 2. I thought that I had sided it out, but I guess
okay?
I took other things out instead. I mean,
Maybe
Iota does feel impactful if I can get it down on a relatively stable board against you.
and the general plan being decided out for Elishnorn makes sense. Just this is a matchup maybe where it got left in, despite that. So a lot of lands here for me. Still shuffling between 2 cards in hand. Here, remembering the crypt, which I forgotten for at least a couple of turns, I think. Like I said, definitely pressure getting to me better and worse. Well, I believe I took it off when Winds of Abandon got cast on a creature, which caused me to search my library for a land. Indeed.
Oh, you put the creature out there, What happened to it?
Garrick has made, I think this is the 4th or 5th beast this game, so really a poor draw from me, supported by Garrick just doing his very best. Here, presumably just a flashback on Dam. Yep.
Still don't have much in the way of offense going here, but we're finally
Thought,
going to get to see what you're holding on to here.
Thoughtseize puts you...
Force of Vigor?
Interesting. So, I was going to say, I have a couple of dead cards in the main, or not, if not dead, at least not impressive in this matchup. And the way I lost game 2 was to animate dead, and you had a signet that you had shown me as well. So I think the idea was possibly just this card could be something that wins me the game better than a couple of my my very few interactive cards that felt more dead.
Yeah, and those 2 cards you mentioned that I had as targets, literally the only 2 targets. So take that for whatever that's worth.
Also casting, I believe you just cast that signet right after the Thoughtseize,
Yep.
as if gloating that you had finally gotten the Force of Vigor out of my hand.
Yeah, because that's what I'm looking for at this point in the game is just a signet. Yeah, that's definitely...
I mean, get you closer to your 3 white mana to overload Winds of Abandon if you get it back.
Sure. 3 white mana lets me hardcast Iona, which is actually a thing.
And I have several ways in my deck to just put Craterhoof into play, so I think at this point I still have a decent number of draws that are quite powerful. Here, okay, we rewind a little bit so I can deal 1 damage to Jace, and then gonna natural order away. So that means I'm not getting Craterhoof, I'm getting Avenger, making a bunch of plants, and then hopefully my last card in hand is a land. Oh, I have a Prismatic Vista in play.
Scary, but I also feel like with the Jace already flipped, there's got to be something I can do about it, right?
Right, you have Dam in the graveyard, right?
Yeah. Or that was game 2, I think.
Oh, if not Dam,
Oh, that was this game. Wow, this has been a long one. Okay.
Yeah, I was pretty sure Dam was in the graveyard. There, you're taking a look at Winds of Abandon, but again, that costs 3 white.
Is that true?
I thought so. I did natural order the creature away, but I could have just minused Garrick to make a beast and then natural order. So again, we had some question about life totals earlier. Well, the beast in play was only 1 power because of Jace. Yeah,
No.
so maybe I missed. And Meat Hook just blowing me out here. Yeah, I think, like I said, I think at the beginning of this recording, but definitely right before it, I feel like I threw this match away 1,000 different times, and it turns out it was all in this game. This game, I think I made 1,000 errors, and
Yeah, and playing this match, I definitely feel like I have the weaker deck, so I really need to capitalize on each and every error that you happen to make, I think.
but here comes another beast. Crater Hoof still. Oh, you going up off all my plants dying messes with the Crater Hoof math, but still could be lethal. No.
You got to keep plugging away at it. But here I do find that third white and hardcast this Iona that's been in my hand for quite a while.
And I remember this point in the game very well because I say, okay, you see a little cut there because we do think about it a lot.
Yeah, I actually
And
tanked on this for like long enough that I would have gotten a warning or two if we were playing like a tournament with judges.
and
I
you
was
named red at the end of the day.
Yeah, I was for whatever reason in my head terrified about some kind of fireball, which have not been in vintage cubes for a long time, and I don't know why, but I could not shake the feeling that I was going to name green and you were going to top deck like demon fire and kill me,
I,
which
I will
doesn't
I
make
will
any sense.
I
But
will share the fireball that I was drawing to was when I cracked that prismatic vista. I looked at the top card of my library, which kids never look, but it was Finale of Devastation, which I could have cast for more than X equals 10 with this
which
amount of mana in play.
I know that that card is in cubes, specifically the one we're drafting. Like I know that. There's
This is
no
me
reason to name
trying
red
to
here.
draw Finale, and I think, yeah, just pack it up.
Yeah,
So,
so trying to capitalize on every one of your mistakes, and I make maybe one of the biggest blunders of the match, but it does not bite me, and I end up taking it down.
right. I feel like I made a ton of mistakes there. I cut off a lot of my outs, but throughout most of that game, I still had big outs to just draw Finale or Craterhoof or Ugin. I had a lot of draws towards those cards, but just never able to get it. Questing Beast also would have been great at any point during that game, as that was a Planeswalker centric game, but never found those, and I didn't give myself the right opportunities to be able to either. So, an unfortunate loss that really stung, but we live and we learn. And let's see what we have for the next match.
So Scott managed to take care of business versus Joey there, sending him into the winner semifinals versus Bats, who was victorious over Matt after coming off of his 2 buys. Meanwhile, we had a lot of action in the lower bracket, with Derek eliminating Prose and Jacob before being defeated and eliminated himself by Matt. We'll be picking up this round watching Matt and Joey fight it out in the lower bracket to stay alive.
So we mentioned during our first match that we had a losers bracket for the way we run the Cubevitational, and here we see as I got knocked down to the losers bracket, I'm playing against Matt. We just saw my deck, but Scott, can you speak to what Matt was playing?
Yeah, he's on a Grixis sort of look. It looks like he wanted to be sneak attack, but that didn't really come together, and he ended up with a smattering of like mid range control kind of cards, a couple token generators. Um, Mostly just trying to steal games off card quality. It looks like.
Right. That's a deck we've seen decline in power a lot, I feel, over the last few years. It used to be, I feel like you could be building a sneak attack or splinter twin deck, the blue red very few card required combo decks. And if you failed to get there, you still had good blue and red cards, and that was often good enough. But recently, cards have gotten good enough. I mean, that's always the case. Cards are always getting better, but it feels like those decks, when they fail to get there, it's now a much bigger hindrance. And here we see a lot of pressure as turn 3 attacking for 5 with Questing Beast, putting Matt down to 14. He arrests the hand, but as we saw last game, interacting with the hand is not the most effective tool in this match.
Yeah, and let me tell you, I'm looking at Matt's deck list right now, and the number of ways he has to answer this start from you is very small. It
Questing
is.
Beast is very powerful. I wish I had drawn it during our match for any of the games. It's a very powerful. I think it's the most powerful mid-range part of the green strategy. Maybe besides Nissa, if you count Nissa 5 as a mid-range part of the strategy, but I think those two have made this deck a lot better in recent years. Just the quality of those two cards alone has done wonders for this archetype. True. I'm pretty sure it can't block here, or if it can, it's weird. Or it can't be blocked here because Matt's creatures are small. Indeed. So, and here we
Okay, also
see
doesn't count.
he tried to block Questing Beast. I point out that it can't be blocked, so he instead trades both the Elemental token and Young Pyromancer for my Forest just to take less damage.
Really embarrassing turn for Matt there. On top of that combat situation, he doesn't want to find himself in. He only had Spell Pierce to answer your Planeswalker, and that was a Spell Pierce that was easily paid for. So very limp turn for Matt, unfortunately.
Right. It's that spell pierce is never going to do much against me, so getting the token at least allows him to trade for one of my lands. Of note here, you're seeing an interaction. Another interaction I really like with the green deck is Gaia's Cradle has always been powerful, but with both Nissa and Rin and Realmbreaker producing, turning lands into creatures, it gets easier and easier to generate absurd amounts of mana off of your Gaia's Cradle. And looks like there was a minus on Rin to pick up Prime Time, cast Prime Time, find a couple lands, attack with Questing Beast. And
Matt
yes,
was behind
I
on the
was
board, behind on land drops, really just had nothing left and packs it in there.
yeah. I was really impressed by Rin throughout the day. I feel like Questing Beast did most of the heavy lifting that game, but Rin presented 3 power the turn it came down and found the Primeval Titan on the turn where I'm assuming I was out of gas since I was choosing to minus the Rin. So
Matt fetching up a tri land. Has no white spells, at least in the main deck, so that's just a enter the battlefield tapped red black duel for his strategy here.
that's able to be fetched off of Scalding Tarn, making Scalding Tarn into a 3-color land as well if he
Yep.
doesn't have anything else that allows it to fit black. Bitter Blossom, a very powerful card, not super effective against my strategy, as we saw Questing Beast gets over it. The Nissa or Rin both produce more power than Bitter Blossom every turn. The Crater Hoof gives, and my other high uh, high cost spells get over it pretty easily. So I'm less afraid of this Bitter Blossom than most people, but here we see an upkeep Vampiric Tutor. So down to 16 already, mostly just by his own paying of life. So Matt threatening to go pretty wide with Bitter Blossom and Young Pyromancer. I'm just over here with a bunch of mana. Could have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 if I play a land first. So potentially 7 mana this turn means I can cast most of what I want. And here we see this has got to be prime time, I assume. Indeed.
No, not quite. Remember, Matt cast a Vampiric Tutor on his upkeep, so it's very likely he was looking for some interaction for your top end, and here we see a Force of Will.
Interesting. So that does put him down a couple cards, -1 for Vampiric Tutor since it puts it on top, -1 more for the Force of Will, but the token creation, meaning that he's still got plenty to work with this game, choosing here to get in for 4 for pretty much free.
And the hope
So,
here has to be that you had one, maybe two top end pieces this game, and he's just going to try and answer those one at a time, even at
and
the cost of -2 or 3 cards.
And of note, I didn't play a land last turn, and I used my Devoted Druid kind of one use extra mana, so I am low on things, but getting in for 4 here with Questing Beast, none of his creatures can block Questing Beast. We talked about that last game. And Mana Vault threatening to mean that any expensive spell I'll be able to cast next turn. So, him. Okay, so this feels like possibly just a match decided on if Questing Beast is good enough, if Questing Beast can take down this game, because I'm only going to be left with 1 card. Matt picks which card it is. We see.
In a natural order,
So
wow.
either one of those probably would have been enough to seal the game next turn, but again, I got to be feeling good here with the Questing Beast. A little sad to lose 2 presumably lethal spells, but getting in for 4. I just need 1 more hit. Bitter Blossom will finish it.
Okay, not the scariest thing in the world, but that's still more pieces on the board that Matt did not want to see.
2 plants.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, big plants.
That has to be disheartening. He was already behind.
Yeah,
But
going to 4 off of the Bitter Blossom. Like, it's questionable if the Bitter Blossom could even kill here,
and
even if he locked up the ground game, and does not have any way. It looked like Questing Beast alone actually was going to get there, but no way to deal with the multitude of threats there. You're right, finding that Force of Will earlier gave him some way to fight back, but just too much too fast. Mm-hmm. Because as Scott pointed out, he wasn't maybe trying to be as controlling, more combo focused, but just failed to get there on that respect. So understandable, didn't end up with as much interaction as we would normally expect. Well, that puts me a little bit closer to getting to fight for the title. Let's move on to the next match and see how it went.
So Joey manages to stay alive in the lower bracket with his defeat of Matt, who is eliminated, and is moving on to face Bats in the lower bracket final after he was defeated by Scott to move on to the grand final, awaiting the winner of this next match, Joey versus Bats.
And speaking of seeing how it continues, we have myself against Bats here. It's currently down to just 3. Bats and I are in the losers bracket finals right now, with Scott having beaten Bats the turn before, waiting to face whichever one of us. So I'm battling here for the rematch to try to revenge from that match I misplayed earlier. We see Bats out of the gate early with a lot of mana. Scott, can you speak to what he's trying to build towards here?
yeah, he actually has a very cool mono blue artifact based storm strategy. As you can see here, he also has just some good top end with all his fast mana, but he's got Mind's Desire, he's got Paradoxical Outcome to draw cards, Brain Geyser, just lots of really neat stuff that doesn't see a ton of play all the time.
So we see he had turn 3 Mirror Battlesphere, pretty scary. Here, nothing to do with 3 mana. I feel like having Cradle into like Utopia Sprawl into Wall of Roots was maybe my way to battle back this turn, but not having anything to do with that 3 mana means it's not looking great. And here, unfortunately, Phyrexian Metamorph copying Mirror Battlesphere means that there's 8 Mirror, so he's going to be attacking with a near lethal Battlesphere this turn. And yeah, it's enough for me to scoop it up. So, not feeling great here. Again, Ooh, I have Wall of Roots in play, though. Right, if I don't have a blocker, it's lethal, and maybe Trinket Mage was finding a way to make it unblockable, but I knew that I was not going to be able to, in one turn, present a win, and that meant nothing else to do. Here, I'm the one with the fast mana. Mana Vault coming down, and Mana Crypt, so access to as much as 6 mana. 7 mana, I guess, with a land drop. Here we see Tireless Tracker, still 4 mana available, but unlikely to spend the vault. I guess if I had Ragavan and wanted to pop the clue, I could, but feel if I'm considering it, it's got to be Ragavan or Lelia I'm considering casting. Here you're looking at Bats is looking at my top card, drawing for the bauble, drawing for turn. Phantasmal Image, copying my guy and passing back.
Much slower start from Bats this game. As the person waiting in the finals, I've played both of you already in this tournament, and I am actually rooting for Bats to win here because his deck does have powerful starts, like we saw in that first game, but he only has blue cards, and I have Iona and ways to put it into play pretty quickly. So our match was fairly trivial, whereas me and Joey played quite a tense 3 game set. Um,
Yes, I'm happy that's the one we had on camera because I watched you versus Bats and that was not a particularly compelling series to watch.
yeah.
So here we
So I'm
see
obviously hoping for a very easy finals opponent here.
my mana continuing to develop, getting in, trading off my tireless tracker for Bats because again, I have the mana development. I'm doing stuff, so Worn Powerstone comes down, threatens to develop his mana a bit, but at this point, I have so much mana going that as long as I have some kind of payoff, I'm feeling pretty good here. We've seen a lot of blue players. I think a lot of the good blue interaction was split so thin that I also don't think any of the blue matchups could have been that tough for me. If there's fewer blue players, then it gets a lot scarier playing against multiple counter spells. Obviously, he's tapped out here, and we saw Force of Will last match from Matt, so I know I'm safe to resolve whatever I want, but definitely giving it a good think here. 4 mana, natural order. Okay, so always got to think things through carefully with natural order. Finding Avenger, getting 3 plants, presumably have a land follow up. Cradle.
Whoa.
Okay, so that's why I was doing so much math before casting the natural order because Cradle makes it weird. Because maybe playing Cradle first to get 1 extra guy is better than having 3 1/2s. Cracking the clue now, generating 5 mana. So 3 mana floating. It doesn't look like I'm using it for anything. Attacking with Ragavan, exiling. Is that Helm?
Yeah, Helm of Awakening.
Happy to see that gone. So Bats had some combo-y stuff, as we mentioned with Brian's match. You had multiple people fighting over this combo deck, which meant neither of them had a ton. Yeah, Bats with a scary turn there with Time Warp to take an extra turn, but then nothing more to do with it after he takes the draw. So he had a lot of mana, but no payoff that could fight against the board. I dissembled with Avenger. Starting out game 3 with Preordain. Anything that isn't a super fast mana start, I'm feeling great about. I feel like we are both kind of Goldfish decks, even though he is playing blue, and I feel like I have the better Goldfish if he doesn't have Soul Ring. My mana dorks are just more. I have more of them, and they're more efficient in that they all cost 1 or in this case 2, but it makes 1 mana when it comes in. So yeah,
Oh, but Joey with the 1 lander here.
definitely scary. Reservoir, I don't feel too threatened by Reservoir. He would have to combo pretty hard, and I had seen that the combo elements, again, they were split thin, so I know that it's unlikely he has something already assembled. And thanks to my top end, I don't usually win by a small amount when I manage to win. So here we're going to tap for 2. That's why I played Nissa off of all my other mana. That 2 cast Rafellos. Make my land into a 3/3. Attack for 3. Anything to do with the 2 mana after combat, since the land has vigilance.
Love to see a Gaia's Cradle here. Oh, nothing.
Yeah, but you can see me fanning out my hand, checking. Ooh, a very defeated looking Worn Powerstone cast from Bats. Very telegraphing. He gains 1 off of the Reservoir. I lose 1 for Mana Vault. Or Mana. Yeah, Mana Vault. Find another land. So, Nissa and Rafellos. But I have my 2 mana dorks in play that don't make red mana. I guess I also have Devoted Druid, but 3 of my 6 cheap mana dorks make red mana, so might unlock something. Ooh. Okay. So attacking here for 8, it looks like. So we saw me use my elf and plant. Reading this there, not sure what that's about. My elf and plant to cast the sage because definitely wanted to attack with as much power as possible. Again, Bats is a combo deck, so if he had anything there, wanted to be able to fight through it. I had lethal on the backswing though, and he had nothing to answer, so end up wrapping up that match and earning myself a chance at redemption in the finals versus Scott.
So Joey eliminates Bats and moves on to the finals, and we have a rematch. Quick reminder that due to this bracket being double elimination, that if Scott wins this next match, he will be the winner, while if Joey wins, these two will play one more match for all the marbles. Without any more delay, there's not much more to say, so let's hop right into the rematch.
And as promised, the fated rematch in the grand finals between myself and Scott. Since Scott's coming from the winner's bracket, it does mean that I will have to win this match and then win the grand finals match after. It looks like we're both on a mulligan to 6 here. Scott, do you feel like that's a thing that might favor you or me more?
I gotta feel like it favors me, given that I have hand disruption that I can further punish your mulligan, and your starts need a bunch of cards to work together to make something strong, whereas I just need like lands and my spells um, in kind of any order. So uh,
Right. That is true. I mentioned during our first match that I thought I had failed to cast a castable Ragavan, and this is apparently the game where that happened. That was a Carpulsion Forest in my hand, and I, for some reason, just didn't cast that turn 1 Ragavan in my head. I've been dashing it the whole tournament. Again, the nerves are still getting to me this match, and I just did not cast that Ragavan.
maybe you didn't want to take a damage, you know?
But game on the play, like I don't think it's excusable to not just cast the Ragavan on turn 1. Yeah, I think literally every time I cast it in the draft leading up to that moment, I had dashed it, and every time I think it had also been correct to dash it, and something about it maybe stuck in my head. So, Huntmaster getting miscalced. So it feels like Scott's in a pretty big lead here.
This
I,
was flipping because I didn't play spells on my turn, and we
right. So we were flipping it. We were correcting that it was supposed to have been flipped all along.
which is in some draws worse for me because I actually want the discard, but either
Right.
way.
We saw that come up during the first match we had. Here we have Dark Depths, and there's our Day Night card that's going to be hanging out over there. And on a mulligan, facing down, discard. Tracker's exactly where we would want to be to recoup some of those cards, but you're recouping 2 extra cards occur now with Thief of Sanity taking one of mine.
Yeah, I'm feeling good about this game at this point. All the early exchanges went really well for me, and obviously I'm ahead on the board here. Your tracker is scary, and your end game is something I have to always be thinking about. But for now, I'm just gonna keep drawing extra cards and see what's happening.
Yes, stacking the trigger so that you draw your own card first before resolving the thief trigger. That way you had extra information.
I'm just checking to see if I can play a land here. Which I
And the
can.
fact that you don't immediately, I assume, means no. This is the reason why I didn't crack the clue ahead of time. Even though not too many draws that would have been better than the natural order that I assume you will take here.
But you show me a second, if slow, green fireball that further reinforces that I should have named green in the end of that first match.
That is true. I think that card is one of the cards that got sideboarded out. We saw in our first match that I brought in Force of Vigor, which I have to imagine is just better than Pest Infestation in this particular matchup. If I get to a bunch of mana, I think I'm going to be able to do much better things with other cards. Pest Infestation definitely a loose playable, as I didn't get exactly everything that I wanted. Here we see the rare takedown on Dark Depths.
Which has never worked, right? We're just wasting time doing that. I'm still gonna do it every time, but like, come on.
You could take it down to 0 and still waste less time than every player who has ever resolved an activation of Sensei's Divining Top, though. So, again, taking the draw before peaking. Last turn was a miss. This turn definitely isn't, as it gets rid of a couple pieces of fast mana, and I believe that was Garrick that it found. So we saw in our first game maybe a little bit of awkwardness about, oh, interesting, Dark Ritual to cast Garrick. That's what I was about to say. We saw in our first match a little bit of awkwardness around multiple bits of white mana, and here we see Garrick being used to set up the second white mana for this Council's Judgment.
Yeah, my mana is atrocious in this deck. Just just horrible.
Okay. I think that here I don't have a ton of outs that I'm drawing to, as the overrun from Garrick threatens to be lethal next turn. I have no creatures that can attack, and I only have what looks like 7 mana. Okay, 7 mana. Pest Infestation. But that doesn't stop lethal, which maybe you're kindly leaning forward to inform me so that we don't have to deal with me getting a bunch of pests, but yep. Garrick ultimate, 1 unblockable creature, 1 flying creature, can't block either. And here we go on to game 2. So now I have to win both of these games if I want to force a rematch, a bracket reset, as it were.
Yep, and I'm obviously, still scared of your deck and what it can do, but feeling good with a match win under my belt already and
And
up the game.
stealing that game on the draw as well. I think you're right, the mulligan, especially if you have a discard spell. I actually think if we both mulligan and you don't have a discard spell, maybe it favors me in general, as you're less likely to have an answer to each different thing I could do. But with the discard spell being just a catch-all answer, I fell way behind that game. And here, quick development again. A tracker that does play around Miscalc because of Devoted Druid, though looks like I'm opting to do something else instead. Okay. So
Tracker
look,
green floating.
tracker green floating. Don't know really what I'm doing yet. Oh, okay. Tracker
Oh,
red floating. Tra-
okay. Okay.
tracker red floating.
Good sequencing, really fully developing the board this turn.
Yep. Couldn't figure out why I was doing exactly what I was doing, but that's why I tapped the Devoted Druid. Gaia's Cradle makes math hard sometimes. So, pretty big turn 3, pretty wide board. No, I'm a turn early from being able to get damnationed or damned, and dam even would require running white sources, which, as we pointed out last game, is pretty difficult for Scott's deck. So, Meat Hook Massacre and Dam are the cards I'm hoping to avoid as I develop out the board, but also this Gaia's Cradle is threatening to make a ton of mana this turn and could, with some cards, just be lethal.
Yeah,
I know
and I do know that I have a damnation in my hand, and I'm really casting this looter so that your Huntmaster doesn't flip, and I can just take less damage going into my 4th mana turn. But
Gotcha.
you countered that nicely with a huge planeswalker that even if I sweep the board, I'm still under a ton of pressure from you.
Right, and sweeping the board kills 3 spells worth of creatures, but of note, I have 2 clues. They're going to be slow to crack once I'm not producing mana off Gaia's Cradle, but still, Ugin on 9. I know we can only see the 3 on the video, but there's another die set to 6 right next to it, I promise.
But can you imagine this game if instead of Ugin that turn, you just played like Avenger of Zendikar? Like, I'm in such a better spot here, and as it turns out, you just had I think an Ugin I didn't even know about at this point.
Sure. I know, even though I've resolved several natural orders, I've mentioned Craterhoof, but never. I forgot that this happened. I was just about to say, I've mentioned Craterhoof several times, and we've never seen me cast it. I promise it's in my deck somewhere. And indeed, it is now exiled forever. So, not going to come up this game, as I think, as much as I was talking about how the green deck has gotten stronger without Craterhoof at least somewhere in the deck is still pretty low power level, but having access to Craterhoof through any of the natural orders that we've seen or the Finale of Devastation I mentioned are very powerful effects. But this is an Ugin game. Different 8-drop, still very impactful, though. Vampire Hexmage just blows it up.
Which good, but you also have Lelia cooking now, so you really just did not relent for even a
Right.
moment.
Lelia and the clues to pop, and the fact that you're down to 7, like I said, I was getting in a turn under damnation, and we're seeing here the strength of it as your life total is a major threat, already at 7. I know you have path somewhere in your deck. If you don't have path on this attack, though, I've got to feel pretty heavily advantaged, and indeed I do get to make an attack. Uncastable natural order unless I have a green creature to cast, but I'd be happy to turn a mana dork into an Avenger or something here. See what we have. Any 2-drop creature allows me to cast that natural order. For Fellows. So this makes 5 total mana. Or no, 4 total mana. And end up getting Primeval Titan, finding a couple more lands, including Prismatic Vista. So that says to me that I might have Avenger of Zendikar in hand, but doesn't matter. 2 lethal threats, Scott scoops them up, and we go on to game 3.
I gotta say, I quite like getting Primeval Titan there in the face of, like, my best answer to that board is another Wrath, so just having, like, securing that you have mana to cast the rest of your top end in that event, I think is pretty strong.
And even if Avenger was available, I think Meat Hook Massacre was one of your outs possibly, but you didn't have enough mana to cast it for enough. Of note, as we see me with a very fast start here.
Yeah,
Turn
I was
1,
feeling great on the play with a library, and then you just played 5 cards on turn 1, and
yeah, turn
now
1
I'm
Wall of
feeling
Roots into Ignoble Hierarch. Feels good. So, of note, again, though, if Scott wins this game, that will be the end of the tournament since he was coming from the winner's bracket. So, I have to win this one just for a bracket reset. Either way, very tense moment here. We had all the other competitors standing around watching the match, and each of us is being pretty deliberate here. Outside of that turn 1 mistake last game, I feel like everything's been pretty tight, pretty well calculated.
I'm really hoping that your play here lines up against the cards that I have efficiently. You've shown quite a wide spread of big threats, so some of those are easier to answer than others, and I'm probably pretty disappointed to see Nissa.
Yeah, 5 mana from a green deck. As soon as I tapped that, even though I was thinking about it for a while, so maybe I had other options, as soon as it's 5 mana, that almost always is going to be Nissa. And 3 mana in second main if I have anything to cast.
We're gonna
That doesn't look like I do.
We get Iona. So I'm enacting my game plan pretty quickly as well.
Right, even with Nissa in play, I think Iona on green here is probably still going to be impossible for me to beat. But
I have to tutor, and that only leaves me with 1 mana left. So putting this Iona into play is going to also cost 9 life.
okay, that does change the math again then.
Yeah.
Also, it makes Ugin a very interesting card if I'm able to find it. I'm pretty sure this time we're naming green. In our first match, I tricked Scott into naming red, but at this point, I think it's naming green. Oh, okay. So this attack. And I'm moving very quickly now, so definitely anticipated that block. And Ugin and kill Iona because it took 4 damage off of the forest.
Right.
Yeah, from the Exalted.
Now
Okay.
I'm pretty confident that I am going to lose this game and the first match, but I get a draw step here, so.
Right, and a damnation buys a ton of time as it leaves me with no colored mana. wiping away the one land I had. I didn't have another land for that turn, so it becomes just an Ugin game. But you're at 8 because of that reanimate, mentioning costing so much life
Yeah.
on Iona. So
I guess
really
the plan is
just
Damnation now, draw a Hex Mage, and hope that you brick for a few turns. Which that's a line, you know.
yeah. But if I draw a land and get to immediately animate it with Nissa, that's also putting on a clock. That means just answering Ugin isn't enough. So here, plussing no targets. I guess I am threatening Nissa's ultimate as well, which if I just have a ton of mana, I think even if you kill Ugin this turn, maybe I'm able to still win. Just getting all the forest out of my deck. Inquisition. Yeah, so if I get to ult Nissa, I think that hand still manages to find a way, and I eventually get a hit in with Questing Beast somewhere, but doesn't end up happening. No way to answer the Ugin, and we have a full bracket reset. So this is the grand finals. Whoever wins this match wins it all. And of note, we hadn't mentioned it at any point throughout, but we had seeded the tournament based on all the other drafts. I mentioned that part, but the part I didn't mention is that the person with the higher seed had player draw choice. So in all of my matches against Scott, which maybe is something we'll revisit in future seasons, but in all my matches against Scott, I was the player who got to play first, which is a nice little advantage. Another
Huge
reason,
opening.
yeah, another huge opening. Ren and Realmbreaker just plussing, not doing anything else, but
And I gotta say, I was not feeling a lot of the nerves that you were mentioning in some of the previous matches until this point. I all of a sudden really, really, really wanted to win very badly, and your deck was quite strong, and it started to hit me here that I might not actually win this because I cruised through the winners bracket. I mean, when I say none of those games were very hard, you know, you can believe it. I just breezed on past so many people.
yes, and
Uh,
of note, that winner's bracket run was pretty short since being the 3 seed overall meant you got into it pretty high, only had to win a few matches, I believe 3 exactly, to be in this spot, whereas those of us that got knocked down to the loser's bracket had many more matches to play. Here we see turn 3, maybe turn 4, no, turn 3, Ugin. Iona in the graveyard, but either way of bringing Iona back is something I maybe can deal with, because if you reanimate, then you go down to 5 and 2 hits with Ugin kills you, whereas animate dead would be something that I can -2 Ugin and kill without killing any of my own cards. Hex Mage, again, killing Ugin from nothing. Very scary. Here you see I'm choosing to untap the Mana Vault. Definitely a sign of weakness, or man, and taking damage off the Mana Crypt. But Ren and Realmbreaker continuing to take up just one short of Ultimate, and it's a newer card. Not many of us have played with it before with the Ultimate, but it's quite powerful, threatening to recast my permanence. Here we have you reading it now. So get in for 3 and threaten to start recasting things. Maybe that's why I'm untapping the vault, to make sure I have the mana to possibly recast the Ugin. But here we see 2, 3. Not exactly sure how much mana this is for. I think it's for 4. True, but and I more so meant what X was there. I don't think X was that high. So Mind Twist takes my Avenger, but again, with Ren ultimating, that doesn't ultimately matter. So library's gaining you a bunch of cards, but as soon as all my permanents have the ability to be played from my graveyard, kind of unlocks. Exiling my only creature, definitely a downside for me. Here, an interesting line for me. I think I can afford to untap the vault. Let's see if I choose to do so. It looks like I am. Oh no, I can't untap the vault. I And of note, I think I can afford to untap the vault because Rin and Realmbreaker allows the Cradle to tap for a mana. Because I do want to have 3 mana after the ult. Even though, admittedly, I think maybe I forget that. So, we will see. So, 3. Okay, I do tap it here, so that presumes that I understand that it can tap for mana. So that's 6 mana. Ultimate. I don't think, as I said, newer card, I don't think we have that emblem token.
But did you look for it though?
It's my token collection. I feel confident, but maybe I'm wrong. Here, maybe rewinding a bit. Not sure. Oh, yes. I replayed the Ren, have some amount of mana floating, and so that's why I tapped the vault before doing any of that, so I could spend that mana to recast the Ren and Realmbreaker and still have colored mana up to cast anything I find. And we saw, so that happened very quickly. The Ren ultimated, which allowed me to cast permanents from the graveyard, which I immediately recast Ren and was able to minus it. And yeah. So Lelia gets exiled, but again, these cards getting exiled is annoying because it takes them off of the list of things I can do with Ren and Realmbreaker. But now I have 9 mana, not counting Mana Vault, so I can cast the Ugin from my graveyard. So this Jace even is just dead to the Ugin if I want. So I imagine here I won't untap, though if I take the damage, it does start to get a little scary, but don't take the damage that turn. Do take one off the vault. Very quick, easy decision. And then I have to imagine this is play a land from graveyard and then cast Ugin. So it's 5, 6, 7. That's one too many for Ugin. Oh well.
Didn't need that one.
Ah, there we go.
Did need that one.
I mean, I just need 1 land to be able to attack you for 3 after killing the Jace. Doesn't matter if it's that one or the Cradle. But yeah. So getting in, putting you to 5. So lethal next turn, able to recast the Devoted Druid. Again, you exiled my creatures with power, Raphaelis and Lelia, but still get to cast Devoted Druid, all because the Ren and Realmbreaker ultimate. So second time asking you to answer this Ugin. Yeah, it actually doesn't do anything even if you had a way to animate dead. The Hex Mage, recasting Ugin and plussing it, and activating Ren are still lethal. So
Yeah, I do still have the Council's Judgment. That was like basically the only card that let me keep playing that game, but obviously didn't find it. So we're on to game 2, and now I'm extremely nervous for obvious reasons.
Right. Plan worked there. Take advantage of the fact that I got to be on the play. Here, you having the Tundra, I don't think I ever mentioned it during our match, but like I had noticed how light you were on white mana. Seeing you lead on Tundra meant, okay, I'm not going to get a free win of the tournament by you just not being able to develop your colors.
Yep, and we are post board again, so I have many more answers to creatures in my deck. Um, I'm on the play this game, so I do have a couple things going for me here.
True, we didn't mention with the bracket reset, but it was again a full new match, which meant that we de-sideboarded for that game and are re-sideboarded now. And again, getting something going the turn before Damnation is terrible. Here, Meathook Massacre would still be bad for me, but Rin and Realmbreaker again active, but here is that Council's Judgment. Double white on turn 3 after we made fun of it so much earlier. But still, I have a ton of mana at my disposal this turn, so a Noble Hierarch is my red source if I have one of my red spells. We have seen all 3 of my red spells. It's just Huntmaster, Lelia, and Ragavan. I think there was some red card in my sideboard I was going to bring in some matchups, but was not the case here. Here, dashing Ragavan to get in for 3 off of the Exalted trigger. And see what we exile. I think maybe some catch up on the life totals there. Can't quite see what that is that got exiled. Might be seeing it cast here. No, just a Huntmaster. Okay. Yeah. So my hope is that if you have Damnation, that was the black source you needed to be able to cast it. Ragavan at least is back in hand after the dash, so a Damnation isn't fully devastating, but definitely not good if you're able to cast it here. Also, seeing Iona go to the bin, definitely quite scary. And indeed, the overload on Dam. So again, that second white mana being a huge determining factor in this game, as 2 double white spells are what has stunted me. Here we catch that I'm supposed to have a treasure token, so we correct that, thankfully.
Put a lot of magic today, guys. A lot of magic.
Yes, I believe this is my 12th round, if I'm counting correctly. But coming through the losers bracket, I don't think that's possible. Oh, that's true. Maybe it was fewer. Either way, still a large number. So demonic tutor.
Almost immediately play demonic tutor because I'm going to lock you out of the spells in your deck.
We know I have Ragavan in my hand. I can dash that.
Block. Declare a blocker.
So here, of note, I'm up a game. I have another game to go, and I have gotten Scott to play incorrectly before. So I think I am dead. I think I have no outs. I mentioned the 3 red spells in my deck. None of them can do anything here. But I have to play this out in case... I have to play this out in case it affects Scott's decisions going into our final game. I guess maybe there's a chance that Ugin isn't out here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 mana, so 2 mana away. So if he attacks, doesn't have a blocker, I attack, make a treasure, play a land, and have Ugin in hand, I would have exactly enough mana to cast Ugin, -2 to exile the Animate Dead, and be stable. But if Scott has as much as a blocker or a removal spell, that no longer would work.
What about your blocker?
Gaining 2 life, making 2 blockers definitely means I think I'm on no outs. So again, this is just bluffing for the smallest amount of information value. Making Scott kill me. No, okay. Scooping them up there as
Game
I go
3
into
for
my
the
turn.
finals.
Yes, whoever wins this game takes down the entire Cubevitational. So both of us being careful. It looks like I'm mulligan to 6, but I'm on the play, which feels like the most important thing. I know in the last match I lost one game on the play, but feels so hugely impactful to get to develop before anything could get picked apart. Here, mana looks good. My 3-drop is just a finale for 1, so that takes away one of my outs in the later game, losing the finale, unlike Green Sun Zenith, which would shuffle itself back in. I didn't have Green Sun Zenith. It felt like it was the one card I was missing that I really would have wanted in this kind of archetype. Hetzmage threatens to turn off any of my planeswalkers here, but I still gotta play this Garruk. I at least get an untap, which lets me cast Wall of Roots. So a lot of mana development here. And if you trade Hetzmage for Garruk at least, then I have a lot of mana, and again, I'm a turn away from getting potentially board wiped. But Demonic Tutor for Dark Depths. So how much mana do I have going into my turn? Yeah. So
Yeah,
here I
this is a
have,
plan that has not come together yet for me at all.
and I got to say, because it hadn't come together, again, we had all been in the same room watching each other's matches. Because this had never come together, I think I maybe.
Yeah, but that was very, very late game. What I mean is this just like I mean, I put a Dark Ritual into my deck so I could do this on turn 2. Like, that was the best thing that card was gonna do for me, and it just never happened all day.
Yeah, so I think I underestimated it. Here, my mana is a little awkward. I wish we could see what was in my hand, because I remember it being very complicated, the lines I was considering here. So here we see Tireless Tracker, land, make a clue, sacrifice the clue. So 1 mana left off Ignoble Hierarch plus Garruk activation is 3 mana available. I think that off of that clue, I just drew Natural Order, if I'm correct. So I think I am. So I think I am 1 mana short of being able to Natural Order for a card that would let me survive here. Of
Yeah,
note,
you've
Birds
already
of
done
Paradise could block, or Huntmaster could gain 2 life. And if I get to my next turn with Garruk on 5, then I get to
I'm
win.
going for it here.
Yeah, so you go for it. I have 3 mana up. Of note, I guess if I Natural Order, I would want to Natural Order for Bird, so that I can block so you couldn't kill Garruk. But Huntmaster also is the one that I would have to get to make Garruk lethal. But here I make you attack, and you can see I lean forward, and there is the Natural Order in my hand. So the mana just ever so slightly short. If I had had one of my artifact mana accelerants, or if the land had been Cradle, that would have been enough mana. But unfortunately, just not quite there. Yeah, so got caught kind of underestimating the quick Hetzmage decks. Like, I thought I was the quick deck. I thought that me getting mana accelerants down before you could play the before you could play Iona off of Reanimate was going to give me a good shot, but then just turn 3 assemble Depths Mage meant that you picked it up. So
And with that, we have our champion. Though he fell in the first match of the rematch, Scott managed to take out Joey in the tiebreaker and become the second LCL Cubevitational champion. Let's get a few of his thoughts on the victory.
Yeah, I can't really put into words how good that win felt. I have won like PTQs and qualified for the Pro Tour, which is like a big deal. And this was really close to that. You know, it's easy to shake off this league as it's just like a silly thing we do because we want to cube and hang out a bunch. But this win really, like, I was on cloud 9 the entire rest of the night. It felt so unbelievably good. End of the day, A lot of things had to break my way, as the winner of any Magic tournament would also say. But they did, and to cap off a season of some of the most fun Saturdays I've ever had in my entire life as the champion, it's just incredible. I can't imagine a better way. I mean, maybe that's dumb to say, obviously, but yeah, it was just awesome. It's super fun tournament, and yeah, I can't wait to play the next one.
So as the main prize for this event, we commission a piece of art for the winner to be used as a token of their choice in our cubes for all future events. For this victory, Scott chose to be enshrined as a treasure token, and this art was the result. Keep an eye out for this token in our future coverage and videos. So after 2 weekends, 5 drafts, and several matches of Magic, the coverage of our second Cubevitational is wrapped up. Congratulations again to Scott for taking down this season's tournament. As always, if you want to keep up with our videos and keep track of anything happening in future seasons, please check out the description where you can find all of our info, including social links, old videos, cubes, or anything else you might wonder about during these videos. We really hope you enjoyed this coverage and hope you come back to check out more of our future videos.